Welcome back to our restoration project. Today we're going to rebuild our dashboard. So we're just coming out of cold weather now, and the car is really at a point where we need to catch up the dashboard and remaining interior trim bits here with our upholstery. So what we're going to do today in this video, we're going to strip down all these old parts here, start the reconditioning process and reupholstery process of whatever is needed to get them back to new condition. One of the things we're going to do here for our dashboard is like a pressed horsehair type mold, and it's in pretty good stable condition, but we'll need to re-solidify, re-sand and reshape that to some degree to get a nice shape on it. If we do that, then we won't have to put any foam on there to build up a shape. I think it'll work out a little bit better for us, so we'll see how that goes. Also, we're going to re-punch all these holes. That should be a lot of fun. There's probably 500 holes in there. But anyways, let's move in a little bit closer with the camera and we take a look at the condition here, and then we'll take everything outside and strip her down.
All right, so getting started here with our main dashboard here, you can see actually it looks pretty bad, but the condition of it is really not so bad, as our horsehair here is pretty stable. I think we can reuse this. The problem is if we destroy this, we're not going to get back to our original shape, and it would be very difficult to reproduce that shape that the factory put together for us. So even these front lips here, these are really important to maintain a tight bend as we come around that up through, I believe it was 68 where they made some dashboard changes, 68 or somewhere between there and 69. So their early dashboards had these speaker holes punched in to the material here, and then the later dashboards actually had a grill that you could snap down in there and make it a lot easier to access that and reupholster that. So this is really going to be the most difficult and time-consuming part of the dashboard. But if we can get through this successfully, it'll really make for a nice job. Looking at the bottom side here, it's actually in pretty good condition, just a little bit of surface rust there. You can see it breaking through the old contact cement and a real thin layer of paint there. But being a thin paint on there should make it easy for us to strip this down and get back down to bare metal fairly easily. Also, the way this goes together, it's a two-part configuration where one part presses into the other and lips in there with those tabs there. Should be real interesting to see how that works. And coming around the front here, so this is the part here we want to try and get right, because this is where it tucks down into our gauges, and if we don't have this area right here nice and tight to the horsehair pattern there, then we're going to be drooping down onto our gauges, and it might look a little bit thick there. So spending some time with that to make sure we get that nice and tight in there is going to be real important. And then the front part of the dash here. Also, you can see in the lighting here, you got some telegraphing. You have some telegraphing coming through there, and this is from the old horsehair. Just you know, as the material breaks down over the years and tightens up, it's just getting dented and dimpled from the horsehair. So we could either put a foam padding under that to eliminate some of that, or we could try to reshape our horsehair pattern, which is really, I think, the way to do this. We get a real smooth face on there, and we won't have any telegraphing at all. And then also, if we don't use the foam on the horsehair, we won't be too thick with our appearance. And then looking at our lower crash pad here, our knee pad, this one really not too bad. A little bit of residual rust in there. Should be easy enough to get out. And also on the face of this, this does have some horsehair shaping in the pattern here. So once we get that stripped away, we'll be able to see what kind of condition that's in. And then while we're moving through everything at the same time, everything really is kind of the same process here with all this trim. So we're going to move through these door garnish rails. They look to be in real nice condition. We'll just strip those down and reupholster them, and they should come up like new again. And then last, we'll include our door handles here. Pretty simple to go through these also. I've already got kits made up. Autos International has sewn us up some new handle kits here. So once we get these stripped back, the same condition as everything else, shouldn't be too hard. Put them back together and get those looking like new again also. All right, let's take this mess outside and strip them down. So looking at the inside, our horsehair looks to be in really nice condition, but you can see here that they had a real thin micro layer of just a regular foam to kind of bridge the imperfections in here. See, it's just kind of packed in there and disintegrated over time. But and then an armrest. Looks to be in pretty good shape. All right, so bird's eye view here of everything after we got it all stripped down. I was able to get some of the horsehair moldings separated from the base structure. And what we can do there, we can go ahead and solidify that with some resin in a separate piece, and then we'll reattach afterwards. As far as our main dashboard goes here, that has to stay intact. I'm not able to separate that one. But our armrest and lower crash pad, no problem. Chemical paint strip to remove the paint, the contact cement. Going to need a wire brush, sand, and sandblast to get this back down to bare metal. Going to take me pretty much the rest of the day. So let me go ahead and roll through all this, get that done, and then we'll take a look at it. Okay, let's take a look at some of our paint stripping here and see how we did. So this right here, about 4 to 5 hours to strip all this back. Just absolutely miserable work doing this, but you really got to do it, and here's why. So even if you have, it still looks like it's got a good coat of paint on there, what happens is a rust gets underneath the paint. You can see right here. And if you don't get absolutely all of this paint and old glue off and get down to the rust there, what's going to happen is your car is just going to continue to deteriorate underneath your new upholstery. So even though this takes a really long time to strip back and finish, really need to do it to do a nice job. Okay, these guys are just about ready to go here to start the sandblasting. With the exception of our main dashboard, I can fit pretty much most of this in the tank. Okay, so we're all sandblasted up here and ready to move on to our next step here. You can see that sandblasting just really gets in there and does a nice job of tuning things up the way you need to have it. And get all that gunk cleaned out of there. Okay, so we can't do our main dashboard at this point. So what we're going to do, we're going to take some resin and solidify this this molded shape here. Also, we're going to solidify this piece here and then the insides of our armrests. So preparing our molded shapes here, what I'm doing first is taking our super adhesive and just looking the part over real close and make sure everything is stuck down 100% all the way around. Our main dashboard here, everything really tight to begin with, so we're in pretty good shape there. Just a couple of loose spots that needed attention. And then also I'm taking an orbital sander with some 80 grit and just running over the surface to clean up some of the loose material on there and to help shape a little bit smoother before we get started with our resin. What we're going to do, we're just knocking down any high spots here, getting ready to plane it down for our final shape. So that'll help for when we seal it. And then also blowing it out really thoroughly with compressed air. Also, we're going to be doing this trim piece here, inside and out. And then I thought this was really interesting, the type of tape that they were using to bridge. Basically, they're using as a bridge for any large indents in there. For when they wrap the finished material over there, it helps support any of the hollow lower spots there. And actually, that tape looks like very close to our modern day duct tape, just without any colors. Almost like a fabric type tape with an adhesive backer. Works pretty much the same as our duct tape. And this is what we're going to be using. So the mix on this is 10 drops to 1 ounce of fiberglass resin. We'll just mix it up in this cup here. And we'll have about 10 minutes working time to spread that out. After that, it's going to become too thick and won't be able to work with it. All right, just mixing up about 6 ounces here to get started. All right, taking a look at our final brush out here. So about 12 ounces of resin to get through everything here complete, all 4 pieces, and that puts a real nice thick coat on there. Once this becomes fully rigid and able to work with, then we can come in here and strip out all this paint safely without damaging our molded shape here. And then look at our top side. So while all this is drying up, it's going to take a few hours. Let's go ahead and set the bench up and we can get going on some POR 15. So there's a couple of real nice paints that we can use to recondition these parts and seal them up. One of them would be the Vht Engine Enamel. This one would be real quick to just spray out and get through the parts fairly quickly. The problem with this one is you're going to need at least 48 hours of cure time before you can sand it and adhere contact cement to it. If you go sooner than that, what's going to happen is the contact cement will activate the solvents in the VHT, loosen it up, and then your material won't stick. If you wait longer than 48 hours, you should have no problem spraying that out, and that should give you a real nice finish. Either way, whether you use a VHT spray out, POR 15, all this will have to be sanded 100%, so we have good contact cement adhesion. In this particular set of trim, I don't really have any aggressive rust pitting in here that I need to be concerned with. You can see I have some real mild pitting in there, but our POR 15 is going to span that. We'll be able to sand that up, and that won't present any issues to our upholstery work. However, if you have some aggressive pitting in here, the best product I think to use is going to be this VHT. So what you can do, you can spray a couple of coats on this, wait 48 hours, sand it, spray another couple of coats of VHT on top of that, and then sand it again. And what that'll do, it almost acts like a filler primer. There's so much solids in this, it's so thick that you can actually bridge all those deviations in there with some pitting and get your piece back to very flat, very good usable conditions. You won't have any telegraphing whatsoever. The whole trick though is the waiting time with that. If you go too soon, you'll end up with a real mess on your hands and you'll have to strip it all back. And then I'm pre-wiring some of these parts here just so I can hang dry them. Once we have everything all put together there, can have a place to put them. Otherwise, if we brush this out with POR 15 and we set it on the bench there, it's going to stick to the bench, pull the paper up, we'll have a big mess on our hands. So best way to do the POR 15 is to brush it out, hang it, and not let it make contact with anything. And again, the whole trick with this POR 15 is just to dab it on there, push it into where you need to have it, and not put it on too heavy. And one coat should be more than enough to give us a good seal and a surface to contact cement to. Also, the trick to this POR 15 is really the brush that we're using to press it in there, the shape of it. This is an 1.5 inch angled sash brush made by Wooster. And all this stuff here we're using today, you can find all this online in our new store. All right, just hang drying everything here. So while these are drying up, let's go take a look at our dashboard and see how that's doing. All right, I think we're in pretty good shape here. Everything looks to be dry enough and tough enough to work with. No problem to strip that down. All right, well, I think that's going to work. So now we just need to figure out how to get this thing in the sandblasting tank and get rid of some of this rust. All right, let's take a look here and see how we did with our sandblasting. So cramming this big piece in that small sandblasting cabinet, not much fun at all. It's kind of like shoving a car into a phone booth. But what I did is I put half of it in there and then tinted the door side of it with some plastic. That allowed me to work with it and get through it. Not much fun, but it does a real nice job. getting all that gunk out of there. And then what my sandblasting couldn't get out, used a 3-inch wire wheel on a drill, and just got down in there and got everything out. And then looking at the bottom side. So between that wire wheel and the sandblasting, able to bring this back fairly nice. So now we can feel confident we can cover all this up and won't have any issues with rust in the future. Then the other thing I did while we're making a mess outside is I took a 80 grit orbital sander and ran over the surface of our freshly resined encasement here and just kind of reshaped everything. I was able to sand it up real nice now to get a real good shape here. And that's going to help us build a nice foundation now for our wrap that's going to go around that. So by sanding it rough like this, what it'll allow us to do is to bring the shape in right where it really needs to be in a more exact position to the bend in our molded shape here of our metal. Because our metal is actually going to be the correct screed and the correct shape to pull that line off of. If our mesh material is a little bit high or a little bit low, we're going to have an irregular back edge to that. And this is going to help as a guide as we shape it and fill it in and make it really nice. So I think we're at a real good stopping point for part 1 of this segment, just a preparation work and the procedure to get everything ready to upholster. What I want to do now, I want to take the body filler, work this piece over, get it as right as I can. Also do the same thing to the lower crash pad. All our other pieces are painted up and ready to go. Let me go ahead and sand everything up, get this piece coated and sanded, and then we'll come back on part 2. Everything should be in good shape then. We can take a look at it and start our upholstery process at that time. Well, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on part 2.